counteroffensive intensifies as Ukrainians achieved massive success next to so-called second Bakhmut, city of Avdiivka. And in return, Russians decided to do their own offensive, which was very short-lived, and those Russians which were retreating, they were reportedly eliminated by their own comrades. But more about all this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. And let's get straight to the point and talk about some ridiculous Russian propaganda. And so in this very first picture, we can see possibly the biggest traitor of Russia, the motherland. The guy who is wearing a jacket which says it's common enemy USA. And well, potentially, because according to the representative of the Russian government, Vyacheslav Volodin, he said that Russia is no longer needed to create attractive conditions for people who left Russia to return home, because people already started coming back without Russian authorities even asking them to do it. So pretty much that's what I mean. Maybe this traitor of the motherland, maybe he just came from America and forgot which kind of jacket he is wearing. And the reason, according to Vyacheslav Volodin, why Russians are coming back home, it is because abroad they are treated as the second-grade citizens, they can no longer find work, their children are being bullied in schools, and whenever they start a business, the government intentionally bankrupts it. And no, in this way I'm not talking about Russia, what it does to its citizens. I'm actually just quoting Vyacheslav Volodin, what he says international companies, I mean Western countries, do to Russian people. And I mean, yes, as a Russian I can acknowledge that it was pretty good living in Russia before the war started, but now unfortunately the conditions to return are worse than ever. So just let's all together fact check Vyacheslav Volodin, and please let me know in the comments if you would like to visit Russia right now in the middle of the war. But if your answer is no, can you please like this video and subscribe to my channel, because hopefully as soon as this war is over, we can do all together maybe a meet and greet in Russia. You can also follow me on Instagram, and I will follow some of you back. The link is down below. Alright, and now let's very briefly talk about the Western support to Ukraine. Then we'll talk about the update from the East, Ukrainians achieving massive success near second Bakhmut, and Russians launching their own offensive, before switching to the South and talking about Russians eliminating their own comrades. And so, in this first picture, we can see Ukrainian soldiers who use daily their Leopard 2 tanks in Zaporozhye front lines. Next we have the statement from France, which said that its air defense systems SMPT have been already delivered to Ukraine. And the good thing about these particular systems is that they can intercept targets up to 150 kilometers away at the altitude of 25 kilometers, including ballistic missiles. Next we have the statement from the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, who said that Ukraine will receive 50 billion euros in the next 4 years. But besides Ukrainians, who it might look like that they only receive the support from the West, they still continue to produce their own military equipment, such as, for example, armored vests, as you can see from this video. These are the work of the volunteers and are distributed to the army free of charge. And ultimately, what about Russia? Well, Wagner, our famous notorious private military company, started to recruit drone operators, and they're looking for those skillful people who are pretty good at computer video games, because they think if you're playing like this flight simulators and all this kind of stuff, you will be a pretty good drone operator. So looks like no more convicts, now they switch to gamer boys. Alright, and now as promised, let's talk about the situation in the East, massive success near second Bakhmut, Russian offensive, before switching to the South. And first of all, it is very important to make a stop in Yaroslavl, located to the north of capital of Russia, Moscow, where, as you would guess it, a chemical factory, spontaneously got caught on fire. Then we move to another Russian region called Bryansk, where a local electrical power grid has been attacked by an unidentified drones, as you can see from this video. But as we move to the territory of Ukraine, unfortunately there has been another attack by Russians against the civilian areas in Sumy. And just overall, in the last 24 hours, Ukrainians were able to intercept 31 out of 35 Russian drones, which brings the effectiveness of Ukrainian air defense system to approximately 91%. Next we go to the east of Ukraine, where according to the report by the Institute for the Study of War, Russians intensified their offensive along Kupiansk-Svatove-Kreminna front line, and it looks like that they even made some questionable gains, which are still not yet confirmed by this map. And even Anna Malyar herself, she confirmed that yes, there is a fact that Russians, they started this offensive, let's call it like this, with no success yet, and one of the hottest points in this front line is to the south and west of Kreminna. And as for now, Ukrainians are able to successfully resist these attacks by Russians, and they continued to use drones to eliminate individual Russian soldiers. As you can see from this video, even the trenches do not help them. Unfortunately, the consequences are not allowed on YouTube. That is why if you want to see the full video, as always it is on my Patreon, the link is down below, and there is still 1 week of free access. But, unlike Russians, Ukrainians did achieve a pretty big success next to so-called second Bakhmut, which is the settlement of Avdiivka, and as you can see from this map, they are able to liberate pretty substantial area next to Vesely. Most importantly is that they are able to cross this water obstacle, the water reservoir. And the reason why it is so important and precisely why it is called the second Bakhmut, it is because in the past Russians gave up substantial resources, including human lives, trying to capture this settlement, which they are not able to do it even close. And now Ukrainians are able to already pretty rapidly starting to recapture territories at least to the north and sometimes to the south of this city. And at the same time, as you can see from this map, all the territories which Russians occupied in February 2022 are marked by this red color, but then those territories occupied before are marked in this pink color. So if Ukrainians are successful in Avdiivka, potentially they can push Russians back to 2014 front lines, and then in the future maybe launch the counteroffensive against the major city in the east called Donetsk. As for now, obviously it is way too early to tell about these predictions. Once again, these are just my own personal assumptions, but as you can see, Ukrainians, besides fighting in the south, mainly in Zaporozhye front line, they are also attacking in the east. And then also besides Avdiivka, we have this video from Marinka, where Ukrainians were able to successfully destroy a Russian armored personnel carrier. And just overall, in the last 24 hours, you, simply will not believe it, so just pay attention. Ukrainians were able to destroy 3 control points of Russians, 10 concentration of Russian forces, 2 ammunition warehouses, 1 fuel depot, 15 artillery units, 3 air defense systems, and 2 other important military targets of Russians. But wait, there is more, because now let's go to the south. And if you remember, from the last couple of days, Ukrainians were able to destroy a massive, truly incredibly big ammunition warehouse of Russians located in Rykove. And as you can see right here, this is the consequences of the termination of this place. We even have the updated satellite images which show the complete total destruction of this place. And just briefly going over the consequences of Kakhovka Dam incident, as you can see from this video, unfortunately, this is the current condition of Kakhovka water reservoir, which is pretty much empty. But most importantly is that the area around Zaporozhye Nuclear Power Plant is also pretty dry, as you can see from these satellite images. And as you might know, nuclear power plants, they rely on water to constantly cool down their reactors. But as for now, they do have subsequent enough, water reserves to continue cooling down the reactors. And speaking about Zaporozhye nuclear power plants, we do have some preliminary reports by Ukrainian intelligence that Russians are also mining this power station. So potentially, in the worst case scenario, I mean, they will be incredibly stupid to do this, but potentially they might explode and destroy this station as well whenever they're gonna be retreating from it. And in case this happens, potentially up to 2 million square kilometers surrounding this power plant can be affected by the release of the radiation, including the territory of Russia. But okay, back to the Ukrainian counteroffensive, and if you remember, a couple of days ago, Ukrainians were able to successfully liberate Pitikhatki. Well, guess what? Russians who relocated, or I mean, retreated to Zherebyanki, they decided that they want to retake Pitikhatki, so they brought at least 3 tanks, T-80s, several armored personnel carriers, and obviously dozens of people. This attack was pretty unexpected by Ukrainians, but it was easily repelled. We even have this video with the destruction of one of Russian tanks. The video is almost 2 minutes long, and the full version as always is on my Patreon, link down below. But I mean, the main question here is, why would Russians try to recapture this not that significant settlement right after losing it? Because they were tired from the battle, tired from retreating. Why would they go back? And well, relying on some Western intelligence reports and just basically a known fact from the past that Russians use so-called barrier forces, which main responsibility is to eliminate its own soldiers who are retreating. So at this point it just pretty much makes sense. Those Russians who are ordered to recapture Pitikhatki, they simply had no choice. On the one hand, if they refuse to do this and they keep retreating, they will be 100% eliminated by their own comrades. But in case they decide to return and at least try to recapture the city, they have maybe at least like 5-10%. So once again, they literally had no other choice. And this, as you would imagine it, decreases the morale of Russian army even further. It is also a known fact that they are afraid of the upcoming full Ukrainian counteroffensive. Their defenses are pretty much almost breached. In Zaporozhye, Ukrainians almost were able to find the weak spot to emphasize their attacks exactly in this location. And now, if they are trying to retreat, Russians I mean, and save their lives, they will be eliminated by their own friends. I mean, who would want to fight under these conditions, right? And I mean, just think about it. What do we have as a result? Ukrainians who are constantly receiving Western military support, Russians who are depleting and going through their armor and military vehicles reserves so fast that they're not even able to fix them and replace them before losing them. The morale is extremely low. Ukrainians are protecting their own land, so they will be fighting until the very end. And all one last missing puzzle piece in this entire picture is for Ukrainians to actually find the weak spot. And the counteroffensive itself, even though it might seem pretty slow, it does happen, slowly but surely. Even the British intelligence report confirms this, saying that Ukrainians, they do make small gains here and there across multiple front lines. And as for now, in no particular order, the most significant counteroffensive front lines are happening next to Orikhiv, Velika Novosilka, and pretty much across the entire Bakhmut-Avdiivka front line. And pretty much yes, right now it does feel like a calm before the storm, especially because the Ukrainian military authorities, they asked for the operational silence, so we might potentially have some Ukrainians recapturing some land, but these are still being not yet reported, once again for operational silence purposes. But in one way or another, sooner or later, Ukrainians will be able to exploit on their success and start advancing even further and much faster. If you don't want to miss this exact moment, just please subscribe to my channel, it only takes one click. The absolutely best way to support my channel is through my Patreon. You can also become my channel member or simply use a PayPal link. Everything can be found to the right and down below. Guys, be careful, there are scammers in the comments pretending to be me, and thank you so much for your attention, товарищи, and see you tomorrow.